If any of you have been to the last ones and seen me done this before, you know that it's keep your ears open. It's a whizzy job. I go through it like there's no tomorrow. So make sure that you're following us on our website, because that way you get the all the emails and that Dawn sends out with all the information. But also make sure that you're on the Textile Teacher Centre and the A-level Fashion and Textile Centre for A-level tutors. Also, a lot of you are on the Textile Skills Centre, which is a separate group, which is a general group, but a lot of people that are on there aren't on the Textile Teacher Centre. So if you are a teacher, please make sure you're on the teachers one, because that has specific teacher info. Pinterest is great for a lot of your students. It's great for you too. Do follow us on Instagram, because I do it and I do push that one quite a lot. So Instagram is great because Instagram has all the freebies and all the giveaways. And next month we're doing a giveaway with Janome, and they are doing and giving away an overlocker, which I know a lot of you want, and 2 runners-up prizes of £100 goodie bags. So pretty amazing. And then do follow us on YouTube. YouTube is where we have all the careers videos. So Rachel's will go on there tomorrow-ish. But there are a lot of other career videos on there. So if you go specifically for your students, I know it's National Careers Week. A lot of students might like to go on there. We have students talking on there, artists, designers, all sorts, talking about their careers, how they led their careers, what they did at school, what they did at uni, and how that led on to a variety of different careers. So do go and look at that and guide your students towards that. That's great to have. We have a mentorship program. A lot of you know, please, it's free. Go on the website, have a look. I'm not going to go into this. We've got a free pattern pack and schemes of work. Have a look on the website. Our next tea and chat is a textile artist, Linda Harvey, which is she's amazing. She's also one of our volunteers. So and that is on the 1st of April. So do start logging on for that, and then you've got the rest of them there. We've got a 3D printing one. I'm doing one, I believe. Don't know what I'm doing it on, but I'm doing one as well sometime. Mark making sometime in June. But do log on for Linda's. That's quite, and also students love to go to these. So do make sure your students go to them as well.
We may have some students tonight.
Yes.
So welcome
if you are. Welcome if you are a student. If you are a student, there is a competition for you. A very, very easy competition. Take a photograph, send it in. You can win a sewing machine, a trophy, Dryad vouchers, teachers' free courses. Very, very, very easy to do. Teachers, if you want to send the entries in, you can send a whole class load in one go. Very, very easy to do. Take a load of photographs, shove them in a PDF and send them off to us. Very, very easy. Lots of courses. So we got the PAP course for D&T live. We've got art and design PAP course live online. 20% discount for all ECTs, and there's discounts also for self-funders on our face-to-face courses. These are the next courses. We've got a course in Banbury on July the 3rd, Banbury on April the 2nd. Also, these are later on in the year too. Barnsley heat press course 28th of June. Guildford April 5th. Lutterworth March 29th. Felt making Guildford 7th of June. Leighton Buzzard week, is that next week? Possibly. 15th of March, still places left on that one. And then we have lots and lots of online courses, online on-demand short courses and long courses. And that's my new one, the mark making, which I'm going to be showing you at some point. That was me. That's how quick I am. If you want any of that information, put it in the chat and I will send you a link while Rachel's having a chat. Or you can send me an email, nikki@textileskillscentre.com.
So to welcome Rachel Higginbottom from de Montfort. Welcome, Rachel. I'm going to just hand over straight to you.
Okay, thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Nikki, and good evening, everyone. So I'm really pleased to be speaking to you all tonight. When I met Dawn and Nikki actually at the New Designers trade show back in the summer, it was a boiling hot day, wasn't it? And we were stuck in this trade show, and yeah, we decided to swap details, and we've been keeping in touch, and here we are now. So we're going to share my screen and talk you through what we'll cover in the next 50 minutes to an hour. going to be quite interactive, so I hope you're all up for it. So can you see the presenter view, or can you just see the full screen there? Let me just check.
Full screen.
The full screen, great. Okay.
It's good, Rachel. It's all good.
Yep, thank you. So we're in Careers Week for the Textile Skills Centre. My name's Rachel Higginbottom, and I'm going to be talking you through quite a few different subjects tonight. Before I get started, I just wanted to point out this wonderful image, and I follow quite a lot of knit designers on Instagram, and this particular one is a Dutch lady, and she's called Suzanne Hengel. So these slides will be shared with you afterwards, but I recommend taking a look at her work because she does the most amazing innovations with knit engineering and seamless knit and Santoni, and I always find a presentation of her work very inspiring. So if you are watching this and you get inspired by presenting your work in fun and interesting photography styles, then definitely check out her work. So if we move on to the agenda then, I want to start off by talking a little bit about my career in fashion and textiles. I think it's quite interesting to hear somebody's trajectory and the experiences they've had, but also in context of the time that they graduated and how they got into their first job and things like that. So I think that will really help us think about career opportunities now. Because my background's design and development, I'm going to be talking about the digital product management segment, which is known as DPM. Now, there's quite a few acronyms in this presentation, so just hang in there. Sometimes the terminology is updating constantly, and you might see a few different acronyms flying around. After we've talked about some of the exciting career opportunities that we're seeing now in the industry, I'm going to open up a discussion on skills, because I think there's a conversation about skills that we need to nurture in young people and we need to nurture in ourselves. And then there's a discussion on what does lifelong learning mean now for fashion and textiles, especially with so many new technologies coming in and out of our work processes. At the end, we'll have a Q&A, of course, but I'll also be inviting you to what I'm calling AV Playground, and this will be an opportunity to just have a play around with a design agency that specialise in immersive experiences for luxury brands. So it's quite a basic interaction, but I think it will be fun to try that. So that's the agenda. In terms of housekeeping, I'll just go over a couple of things here. So if you have any questions at all, just pop them in the chat. I'll come on to a dedicated Q&A towards the end, or intermittently if I feel like we've got quite a few things we want to discuss on the way. Obviously, feel free to turn your camera on or off, completely up to you. And of course, we'd love it to be interactive, so I warmly welcome any reactions and contributions that you might have. Okay. So, a career in fashion. Some of the things that have played a big part in my career trajectory I've just listed here. So, I mean, internationality has been the main one, really. It's a global industry, and it's definitely presented a lot of exciting opportunities to myself. But I think it depends a lot on what, how open-minded you are to travel and how much you get inspired by working in other countries. But also another big topic that's played a part has been recession. And yeah, I'll talk in a bit more detail as we go on. but that came around the same time as offshoring for me. When I started in the industry, there were a lot of factories closing and quite a big change within the industry, and that was something that really characterized my path forward. And then finally, I'll touch on the benefits of doing a work placement. Okay, so that's me. I look completely different on this one because I got my hair down. But at a glance, I'll talk you through the rough timeline. So I graduated in 2006, and I did a BA in fashion design at Central Lancashire. And the thing about this degree was with a sandwich year. So there was an opportunity at the at the second year to go out into industry and work for 6 months. I was adamant at this time that I wanted to go and work in London, and I was very interested in woven fabrics. I wanted to go and work in tailoring for a well-known brand, and I wanted to focus on woven fabrics. Now, we had this placement tutor, and she was really well connected, and she always used to say to us, you've got to have a first choice, but you've also got to have a second choice because you've got to be flexible in this job market. And so my second choice came up first, and I was invited to go for an interview to Nottingham. And it was, at the time, I didn't realise quite what big deal it was, but it was working on a private label of Chantal Thomas for Victoria's Secret. And it was in the old Courtaulds factory. Don't know if anyone knows that, in Nottingham. So I went for the interview and they offered me the job, and I didn't want to move to Nottingham. And I remember going back to speak to my placement tutor and saying, I've had this offer. I just want to hold out there and go and try and get an opportunity in London. And she was really great. She had a good chat with me, and she pointed out what a fantastic opportunity it was. And so I took it, and it really did just pave the way for me. It ensured that I was offered a role after I'd done my fashion show when we went down to London, and my placement at the time was extended. So we had 6 months where we were working on a creative project. So I made a corset in that time, and I got to present it to the head of design. And then I also had the opportunity to work with colour a lot. So I was a colour room assistant, and I used to mix up a lot of dyes, did a lot of sewing. So it was really hands-on. And to my joy, after 6 months, they offered me the opportunity to stay for a further 6 months and focus on technical aspects. I think if you're a student listening to this, or a teacher, I think what was really valuable about that placement opportunity was it was very structured. There was a clear project outcome after the first 6 months, in that I presented this corset, and I'd gained a lot of hand skills. I'd worked with various different departments. And then I'd also been able to get a handle on what it was like putting the tech pack together and working with the technical team. So I had such a broad range of skills after them 12 months. And most importantly, I had a lot of contacts within the industry. So I mentioned it was with Chantal Thomas, and she was obviously a French lingerie designer. So I was focused on contour wear. And when I graduated, I was immediately offered a job working for a Marks and Spencer supplier. So I worked there for 6 months back in Nottingham, and I specialised in design and product development. So it's commonly known as PD&D in the industry. Again, these acronyms do change and vary across different companies, but that's the abbreviation I've seen quite often. So specialising in design and product development just means that I had experience of the technical side as well. And it really just mimics what I told you about the placements. There was the creative development side, and then there was actually realising it in a product. And I think another important point I wanted to mention about this role was the digital side of this wasn't fully developed. It wasn't very mature. And I'm sure it probably was in retail brands, but certainly for the supply base where I was working, we did have CAD departments, but we were still hand drawing. My education was very much hand drawing, sticking swatches of fabric, knitting on industrial knitting machines. And so when I started moving more into the digital realm, I really felt that lack of tactility in the process. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail as we go through. But after my initial 6 years in industry working for Marks and Spencer, I had the opportunity to work overseas. And this is where things really started to change. I was offered 2 different roles to go and work in Hong Kong, and I chose to go and work for Triumph International. And I headed up a creative team there, and we basically supplied innovation concepts to Victoria's Secret. I did an awful lot of traveling at this time, and I did a lot of traveling locally in China and in Hong Kong, and I used to go and visit the fabric suppliers. I did a lot of development with foam, actually, because it was in the underwear sector. I used to go and meet with Sri Lankan suppliers, and we'd invent new types of foam and laminate them. I learned about welding, molding, using machines, working in an innovation lab. We had a laser cutter. It just blew my mind. It was just like a playground, really, in terms of material. Very close to solid materials as well that you can get in accessories and footwear. So people think about contour and they think about, it's a soft garment, but actually you're developing wires. So you have to understand hardware, rings and slides. There's a lot of 3D printing going into it as well now. So it does have, I like to talk about textiles, but I also like to talk about it in conjunction with materials. So that for me, they're 2 very separate areas. So in terms of offshoring them, I'd seen that the industry was pretty much falling apart in the UK. I was going to visit factories and they were completely empty. There were no machines in there, and everybody was, moving their supply chains, and there was a lot of movement at that time. So I think that really characterized that experience. And I think for young people graduating today, it will be a very natural perception that the industry is global. We work across time zones and we work in certain regions of the world. So yeah, it's I think it's important for the generations before to try and pass on that curiosity when it comes to experimentation with materials and with production processes. So that was, my 9 years working overseas really opened my eyes to that. And a big part of the reason that I went overseas was because we did see a recession in 2008, and this had quite a big impact in terms of like salaries were frozen, companies weren't recruiting, and it just seemed like a really good time to get out and have a different experience. So I worked in Hong Kong for Triumph for 3 years, and then I moved to Germany, and that is really, I've worked for a lot of German companies. So after my overseas experience, I went to work in higher education, and this was like 2020, just as the lockdown started. I'm still working in education. I qualified as a teacher last year, and I'm now a senior lecturer in digital and fashion design. So I've managed to bring my love of technical product development and creative design together with digital innovation, and I'm working across digital design and fashion design now. And I couldn't be happier, because I think the fashion industry, as naturally, it's had to hold back a bit when it comes to digital transformation, because it's inherently a very tactile subject. We have to touch the fabrics, we have to go and visit the suppliers, and we have to exchange knowledge in person a lot of the time, because we're fitting garments. So I think digital transformation is really accelerating now, but we've seen it more commonly with sportswear brands, and like, I suppose footwear. They very mature when it comes to 3D, for example. So that is my timeline at a glance. And I think if you're watching this and you're a visual learner, like I am, I'm a very visual learner. I really like to add icons to things. I like to put things on maps. I like to use logos. If you're a student listening to this and you're thinking about your portfolio and marketing yourself, it can be a really helpful exercise to do yourself what I call a one-pager. So that's something quite interesting to think about. Another little fact I just wanted to share with you is in 2006, Facebook opened to the public and you were able to create your own Facebook account if you were over 13 years old. And you may be wondering, Rachel, why are you mentioning that? But I think that little fact is huge because we are operating in a completely different environment now. We've got social media. It's had a really big impact on how we shop, how we converse about products and consumerism, and then how we're going to have our immersive experiences going forward, which is something that I think is happening already, and it's going to happen with everyday shopping. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe Facebook's been around that long. You're getting these real kind of generational differences now with different social media platforms, but I still think that Instagram is probably the main platform for promotion. And I'm sure like Dawn and Nikki will talk a bit about this if we talk at the end with the Textile Skills Centre. You find that with designers and textile artists and textile engineers, that it needs to be a visual platform, and Instagram just suits that. And Pinterest as well, I think, is still really relevant. Okay, so these are, as I said, I'm very visual. So these are the company logos of the companies that I've worked for. And I've put these on a board, not to brag and say, hey, I've worked for all these companies. I wanted to say that when you work in the fashion industry, you're working with such a broad range of different client bases. So, you know, you've got Germany, America, you've got Britain, you've got very large infrastructure and multinational companies here. So my trajectory is very different from someone that is in an agile startup environment, or maybe somebody's graduating and they want to work for a small scale business that is perhaps a little more aligned to its values and can innovate and move more quickly. I think the biggest challenge that I see working for large organizations is it's not always so easy to change. And sadly, one of these companies is not here anymore, which is Esprit. And they had this kind of, they were a mega brand on the continent in the 80s. They were super trendy, and they just struggled to move with the times. When I worked there, they'd employed a Danish CEO who was turning their company around and investing in sustainability. But it's just a really big task to try and turn such a big organization round with the digital needs that we have today. And especially with the pandemic, I think that did kind of, it was the beginning of the end for a lot of companies. So it's a tough environment now, and there's a lot more competition than there was. But I think by having an awareness of these kind of market levels and the size of the companies that you want to work for or that you are working for can be really helpful, especially if you want to transition your career. And that's something that I've kind of picked my lane and I stuck to it. I'm very comfortable in large organizations and moving between different departments and also collaborating across departments. So I'm a big fan of just standing at the coffee machine, having a chat. I really like to connect with people and to collaborate. So that's always a good way to approach things if you're in a large organization. I think when it comes to education, we have even more challenges because we obviously have very rigorous academic standards that we have to adhere to, and we need to plan with very long time horizons as well if we want to implement change. So that can have its own set of challenges as well. But yeah, that's just a slide to talk a little bit about market size. I want to talk a little bit about the global nature of fashion and textiles. And this map here, I've put sourcing hubs on there. And this is just one career example, my career. And I've put brands and retailers. So the brands and retailers that I've worked for on the last slide are in yellow, and the sourcing hubs are in red. So it just is a really good visual to say that when you work in fashion, it's characterized by certain parts of the world. And so I've spent a lot of time working with Southeast Asian businesses, and I've had to develop a real international mindset, working out there in terms of time zones, different compliance and regulations to do with factories. And it does give you another specialized set of skills. So don't take it for granted. If you're working with certain sourcing hubs or with certain yarns, with certain materials, that certain countries and artisans and makers have specific skills, and you can be part of that chain if you're working with them as well. So I think this exercise is another really good one, just to map out where your activity is focused. Okay, so I'm just going to move on. I'm nearly finished with my career story. And I just wanted to talk a bit about my research before we talk about careers generally now. And it's a little bit wordy, but it's basically to say that my research is sitting at the intersection of design, digital tech, and futures studies. I'm really interested in critical design, human computer interaction, and these kind of speculative futures and design ideas. So, you know, how can AI and 3D technology and immersive media mediate our perceptions of what's possible in the future? So it's a bit philosophical. And what I like to do is have a good Venn diagram. So on the next slide here, I've just kind of distilled what it is I'm actually doing. So focusing on future studies, design, and digital tech. And this is, I love collaborating. I would love to connect with anybody who's on the call that wants to talk more about these subjects and how they intersect. And then in terms of current research, I'm currently working on a digital accessibility learning and teaching hub. It's also for testing, and this is really it's really relevant for fashion businesses as well. It's basically any business that has a website or an app attached to it. How can that experience suit the needs of as many different people as possible? So that's what that one is. I'm also working on a couple of education projects. AI and personalized feedback is a paper I've co-authored with some computer scientists and some secondary school teachers. And we've been looking at how AI can improve the performance of secondary school students. So we're looking at personalized feedback mainly, and that's been very interesting. We did a pilot with just a small sample of 9 secondary school students. And yeah, they start to kind of, you know, converse with AI more. And then future pedagogy. So improving retention and attainment through digital tools. So for teachers on the call, I'm using Miro or Miro. It's a bit like Padlet, it's just an interactive whiteboard, but it's super helpful for bringing people together on and collecting feedback, and also like being creative as well. You can come up with some good ideas to then take into like the physical space. So yeah, it's just like digital tools and digital approaches, they don't exist in a silo, do they? And I'm a big fan in bringing the 2D process as the foundation and then building the 3D on top. Okay. So the next section of the talk is really about careers now. And before I dive into this, is everybody okay? Does anybody want to turn the mic on and say anything, or don't like to just talk at people too much? You're all good?
All good so far.
Thanks. Okay, so careers now. And obviously this is a huge topic for fashion and textiles, because we keep hearing there's a skills shortage and should we have more apprenticeships? Are we teaching the right subjects on our curriculum? Are we getting students ready in terms of digital literacy? And there are just so many things we need to do to get students aware of taking responsibility for their own digital literacy. But what I'd like to do is just break it down and talk a bit about DPM, which is digital product management. There's been some research conducted, and I've linked the papers on this in the report, but this research suggests that we need a different acronym to talk about all the different facets of digital. It was digital product creation, so you might see DPC, but there's an umbrella term here that is trying to catch all in terms of digital. So there'll be opportunities and some case studies of fashion and textile brands that I'm going to introduce. So the visual then. This is what the table looks like, digital product management. We did just focus on the creation, which was like the design process more solidly. And it was mainly focused on, okay, I want to design a pair of sneakers. I want to optimize my sample number at the beginning of the process. Basically, I don't want to make as many samples in real life. And everything was geared towards a physical product. So it was digital for manufacturing products. And now we've got the metaverse, and we've got digital fashion as an end product, and we've got digital asset management. So it's becoming more and more important that we do manage our assets in terms of textiles. And there are whole jobs now dedicated to managing digital textiles. So those are the three areas. And I'm quite happy with that, actually. I think that's quite a nice way of catching all the topics. So you've got digital product creation, and that's encompassing 3D design, digital asset management, which is, I mean, in this case of Hugo Boss, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, they are employing 3D fabric librarians, and all sorts of different job titles are popping up. And then we've got digital fashion as an end product. So that's setting the context for us a bit. And now I've got a quote that I want to share with you from the Interline report. So Interline are digital product specialists. They focus on trend and tech. And if you go onto their website, they publish a report each year, and it's super helpful because they interview a lot of top fashion brands, and they kind of give you a bit of a behind the scenes view of what's going on. And I picked this quote out because I like the fact that, you know, some brands are sat back saying, well, there's a dearth of digital talent and it's holding back the whole expansion of digital. But actually, is that just an excuse? You know, should these industry stakeholders be leading the way? I mean, the end bit here, the medium brand is waiting for others in industry to take the lead and become lighthouses for wider transformation rather than directly pursuing innovation themselves. I feel like education's being given this hot potato and being said, well, it's your job. You need to get people ready for the digital transformation that we need. But actually, I think it's a collaborative approach that's needed. And I like the fact that this quote also talks about 3D being part of core fashion curriculums, and that it's not just a standalone digital module, which is how I have been thinking about it in the past. But more and more, I'm thinking of it like the way we think about sustainability. There are many aspects to it, and we need to find the right part of that to bring into our workflow or our department. So the next slide here is talking by tech about the new job roles and the evolving job roles that I'm seeing. And certainly I go to quite a few conferences and follow a lot of trade shows and designers in these areas. And we're also obviously being at the university focused on research. So 3D is one area that we're seeing just a lot of investment going in there by the mid-level brands to high-level brands. So Clothes 3D and more commonly Style 3D are now starting to compete. They are seen as a more holistic end-to-end process encompassing the kind of presentation and the trend forecasting that goes behind it, as well as the actual engineering of the garments. And then we've also got textiles design and visualization coming into 3D. So a lot of people coming from the games industry being employed in fashion because they're more mature and they know how to handle rendering materials. And then of course we've got pattern cutting. And this is quite a mature area, I would say. We've been using 3D for a while now, certainly in footwear and sportswear, but there are more and more brands coming in that are perhaps a bit smaller and more suppliers that are coming into this realm now. And then we've got smart wearables. This is still really niche, but it's important for innovation. So seeing a lot of responsive materials and sensors. I've seen quite a few interesting concepts by a Dutch designer called Pauline van Dongen, who actually incorporates solar panels into jackets and things so they can be charged up. And then AI. So this is a whole area by itself, but we're starting to see dedicated AI fashion designers now. And I've seen a few job adverts off the back of conferences where creative image makers are being hired. I see prompt designer and prompt engineer, but this is still very technical and maybe belongs more in computer science. But that job title might be adopted wrongly and maybe used to try and hire people that can make interesting images. So that's a very interesting evolution, is how I think, how do we democratize it too? Because we're going to have to start paying for these licenses more and more. And I think if we have dedicated AI specialists that have got all the licenses and they're used to working with prompts, that might be something that is outsourced even. You know, just because everybody can do it doesn't mean they've got the time and they can allocate the licenses. So that's an interesting area, I think, is the pricing models of these different AI powered tools, because it's not just AI powered tools for image generation. It's also, I mean, we've been looking at it for product development with NewArc, where the students are sketching, they're doing like basic outline sketches, and then they're putting it into AI to like finish designing their designs. So it's really a bit like rendering them, so they look polished. And yeah, that's still in its experimental phases. And then we've got XR, so this is encompassing VR, all the abbreviations, AR, MR, mixed reality. And we've got virtual try-on, which is highly relevant for fashion, immersive experiences, stylists, and e-commerce. And I'm not talking here about blockchain and metaverse too much. I'm just focusing on my area, which is design and product development. But obviously, if you're interested, there's a lot more to this. So let's have a look at the first case study then, which is Hugo Boss. Now, obviously, I've worked for 3 German companies in my career, and I lived in Germany for 6 years. And I go to Germany for conferences, and there's a lot of headway being made with 3D. And I think what's interesting about Hugo Boss is they've actually they've brought the approach, they've decentralized on the job training. So they've actually hired full-time 3D simulators and texture artists for the fabric simulations. And so they've been able to be really agile with this approach. And they've got a 3D community that they've trained up in-house of more than 400 people. And it's Sebastian Berg here who has been spearheading this digital transformation. And it's not just in product creation, it's just how can we get our staff skilled up to be using advanced digital tools across many areas. So they are a really good example of a company to look at. And I'm just going to link this with the job adverts, the kind of jobs they're advertising. So they're not just training people up, they're hiring. I thought this was a great one, which is project manager for 3D material library. And they want expertise in digital fabric and trim creation and knowledge in specific softwares. And I'm seeing Clo 3D and Adobe Substance as 2 of the key ones. And it's really important to have knowledge in 3D project management, preferably, it says, within fashion and textiles. So they're hiring for a 3D material library manager that doesn't necessarily need to be from a textile background, because that's how much they need somebody to handle the digital side of it as much as the textile side of it. And I just think that's a great opportunity for us in fashion and textiles to really think about how can we bring them skill sets together. And then we've got an intern for virtualization of 3D knitwear. So background in clothing and textiles. Again, these software packages and modeling skills. And here, video making knowledge. And that's something I'm seeing pop up a bit more as well, is knowledge of video. So in a nutshell, I think you just have to continuously upskill and be willing to upskill in complementary skills. It's not really as much about deepening your skills in one niche area anymore. I mean, I think we've known that for a while, but I just think it's interesting when you start to see the job descriptions. So then the next case study was in Decathlon. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the job titles. So Digital Twin Leader. Digital Twin Leader is quite an interesting job description. I think it's actually component digital twin leader, and then modeling and texture artist. And I'm not saying that you know, our textile students should take the focus off what's really important, which is, you know, honing those hand skills and those craft skills and understanding garment construction. Still think they take front and center, but I do think it's very helpful to stand out in the job market if you can start to add on or become aware of some of these other skills. And then ING is an agency. So a lot of companies are now outsourcing to agencies to digitize, generate, and create experiences around fashion. Here, this company, I met them at an Adobe Substance event, which is a software trade show, and they just had a big long list of companies, all the luxury brands basically, that they were supplying these digital assets to. So yeah, there's the approach where the brand or the company will have a lot of scanning software and they'll scan the materials in and create a digital spec, and then the brands can download the fabric spec and work with that to make decisions quicker. It's basically optimizing the product life cycle. And then finally, I've got in this section, I've got Clo 3D Jobs. So this is the software that is advertised quite commonly in fashion and textile roles. They would like you to have knowledge of this software, and this company have their own job board, and you can it just gives you an idea of the kind of roles that are being recruited and in which countries as well. Because I don't see that many in the UK. But I mean, there are two here, aren't there? But I mean, Pentland, they've invested a lot. That's like Speedo, isn't it? They've got quite a few brands in their portfolio. We have got sports companies like Gymshark as well that are quite advanced with the tech. So yeah, that pretty much concludes that section about the kind of job opportunities that are existing within digital product management. And I think as a summary, I would say being able to be aware of the kind of skills that are being requested now, and to think about digital literacy in a 360-degree view, but not lose sight of them important craft skills that we need to maintain them. So it's a bit of food for thought. So the final main section of the talk is about skills. And this is where I want to talk a bit about conversations on AI. So I'm part of a research group that focuses on, it's actually research in societal enhancement, but we look at AI a lot. And I've asked for some quotes from my contacts on what their views are, so I can share them with you. I want to talk a bit about co-design lesson plans between industry and teachers, and then this whole new area, which is supposed to be huge in the future, which is creative technologies. So starting off with some key definitions, when we think about skills, we sometimes just think about skills gaps, but actually we've got quite a few nuances within that. And I think this is taken from one of the reports that I've linked in the resources section at the end. So you can have a read through those if it interests you, but hard to fill vacancies. And this is the extent to which employers experience difficulties when recruiting for vacancies. And that can be down to a number of different reasons. I sometimes think that the job descriptions aren't written in the right terminology, and so the right people aren't seeing them even or applying for them. So it can be down to, a keyword search gone wrong or something minor. And then you've got actual skill shortages where there's actually a deficit in certain skills. And yeah, we are seeing a real shortage of craft skills. And we had a talk the other week at the university about the red list of the craft skills that are in danger of becoming extinct. So that's one topic. And then there's also shortages where skills just haven't been developed and there's not been the training put in place, or the strategies like the Hugo Boss strategy where they decentralize the training. So then we've got the skills gap, where the extent to which employers think that the skills of their current workforce are suitable or deficient for the needs of the current role, and skills underutilization. This is a major one, is that a lot of the time we don't really know what our team are capable of, and what their aspirations are as well. Because some students, I mean, I see students in my classes that they're very technically minded, and they can handle a lot more in terms of technical. They just need to be encouraged and pushed along a little bit. So yeah, they may not have the skills explicitly, but they've got the right way of thinking, which I think is quite a point worth making. So in terms of just unpacking these skills, so we can actually just share some thoughts on them, is I've pulled out a few quotes from these reports that I've linked. So the first one is from the Financial Times, and it's a bit about the fusion of creativity and technology. And this Financial Times article reckons that over the next decade, it's going to create 160,000 new jobs. And a lot of the students we're teaching right now, or if you're a student yourself listening to this, you could well be in a job that doesn't even exist yet. You know, we're creating new jobs all the time with technology that's coming out. So it is seen as potentially one of the most potent levers for economic growth. And I think that's quite an important area to keep an eye on. Sometimes it can be all hot air though, can't it? So you just have to see. And then the second thing I pointed out was and this has been highlighted in one of the conversations on AI, is accessing advanced digital skills is a critical concern for creative industries employers. And they also report a need for stronger job-specific and management skills. So this report is conducted by the Policy and Evidence Centre, and they are highlighting some really good points here. And I think, you know, if we think about upskilling and developing skills in young people, we equally need to think about it in leadership roles, because quite often we are growing up with different characteristics through our generation, and it can be harder to upskill and find the time for that, especially if people are in leadership roles. And then moving to the bottom left is the interline. New technologies will continuously disrupt our creative processes, and it's our responsibility to embrace and innovate in the way we educate the workforce of tomorrow. So for me, I like to think about that in terms of nurturing curiosity, like getting young people and students and colleagues and asking myself, like, oh, how could I do that differently? Or, you know, what could be an interesting way of using that technology? Or how do I make time to teach myself that? And then, you know, you can start to disrupt creative processes. And then the final quote was, there's a clear need to raise awareness of the need for digital skills by educating on how relevant they are to different jobs and industries. So yeah, young people think about jobs first. And so any initiatives or training needs to be making people aware of that. And I think that's why I quite like the case studies that we've just looked at. So I've not got much more to go here. There was conversations on AI. So this was where I've reached out to some of my colleagues and the researchers I'm working with, and I just asked them to give me their viewpoints on what do they think is the future challenge when it comes to AI. And I quite like what Ryan said, we're working on some personalized AI feedback for students on with him. And he said there's a senior level skills gap when it comes to AI. And one of the biggest challenges will be how to make sure teachers and leaders have the time and space to upskill so they can pass knowledge on. And Stefan and Zakira here are talking about speed. and how AI is accelerating, and that's Gen AI. I mean, we can talk about agentic AI as well. So how do you develop the ultimate virtual assistant so you can be freed up from the admin? This is the dream, freed up from the admin so you can focus on the creative stuff. And then somebody that works solely in AI is saying that, you know, an understanding of the tools and their application is just going to be essential for most industries from 2025 onwards. So yeah, I think it's just about developing a point of view and exposing yourself to those opportunities to have conversations. And that's what I've been doing with the research group I joined, is just meeting every other week and we have a chat about AI and what we're testing, what we're finding out. And that's been a really good practice for me as a teacher. And then one final thing in this section is the lesson plan. So these lesson plans, and I've not used them yet, but I really want to develop this idea of co-creation. So this is a series of lesson plans that have been co-designed with industry and teaching professionals with an aim to introduce students to a wider range of job roles. So a lot of students don't really know how to their footwear career exists, and this focus on fashion and textiles, I had a quick look at it. It's for 7 to 13-year-olds, and I just thought, well, it's got to be a good thing if industry are contributing to lesson plans and understanding what the teachers are up against when it comes to curriculum. But yeah, that's something that I'll certainly be deep diving into in a bit more detail. And I'd love to just start co-creating briefing documents and co-creating lesson plans at my level, which is higher education. So yeah, if anyone's tested those, I'd love to hear more about it. And then just to conclude this section, I wanted to try and have this Padlet discussion where you could contribute some of your views or ideas or anything that's come up for you while I've been speaking in this Padlet. So you should be able to just scan it with your mobile and then directly add a comment. There's no pressure, by the way, but I just always like to try these digital tools. So if we have about 5 minutes on this, is that okay?
We have about 6 to 10 minutes left of the whole thing, Rachel.
2 minutes? Okay, I think just because of so we can finish on time, I will let you continue that later if you want to. And obviously it will be on the recording as well, so people can contribute afterwards. And I think probably a similar thing with the AR playground, which is, I'll just move on here. I just don't want to run out of time for questions. With the AR playground, it is a company that specialises in immersive experiences. So you can head over to the link here and you can test out their different product categories. So they've got bags, footwear, watches, and you can view the products in 3D in your web browser, and you can also have a virtual try-on experience. So this could be quite good for students just to see how it's presented in a virtual space, whether it's a scarf or whether it's jewelry or footwear, for example. So that's well worth having a look at.
Rachel, could you just go back one so they've got 2 seconds to write it down? Is that all right? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so that's called Wanna.Fashion. And again, I've listed all the resources at the end.
Oh, thank you.
So that concludes the presentation, everyone. I've got time for a Q&A here. And I've also added my LinkedIn QR code if you want to connect with me. So that's just there. And then finally, resources. So you should be able to find all the reports that I've referred to, and also the Digital Immersive Experiences Company and the Teaching Resource Padlet. So I'll go back to the Q&A slide. And yeah, sorry, it's a bit condensed at the end for the Q&A, but
Not to worry. Just one quick, it's not so much a question, it's the Suzanne Hengel designer. We met at the Wool Institute with another guy. I can't remember what his name was, which is awful. I think it was something to do with Spin Expo, but they created a trainer, and they did this whole sort of talk about what they were doing and particularly what she was doing, and it was amazing. It was incredible. They designed trainers out of merino wool, the trainer tops out of merino wool. It was brilliant.
Yeah, they work really closely with an innovation studio called Eva by Carola, and they've got Santoni have actually worked with them on an experience centre out in China, which I've not visited, but I'm connected to them and just think what
the Santoni, the knitters, the knitwear.
Yeah.
Can I just say also that the Discover Creatives Fashion and Textiles lesson plan was written by me, and it's also got some AI in there as well.
Brilliant. But yeah, I mean,
bit of AI.
I think that approach is the right approach for sure. Is the collaboration between industry and teachers.
Anybody got any questions for Rachel?
There is one here. Do you think that creative designers will be more important than ever due to this? So I didn't read the rest of it. Do you think creative designers will be more important than ever due to the increased use of digital technology?
I think imagination and conceptualization will be increasingly important because I think creativity and the ability to imagine different futures and different approaches is going to be really important. If you go to a machine or a piece of software and you don't really have any ideas, then it's useless. AI is only going to be as good as the inputs that you give it. So I think, just keeping a high level of imagination and curiosity and creativity, I do think that will be crucial going forward. It's what will make you stand out.
Anybody else got any questions?
I'm wondering if there were any in the chat, because I can see a few icons in the chat.
It just says, what about hands-on skills? So you were talking about craft skills earlier, weren't you?
Yeah, I think hands-on skills.
Nurturing craft skills.
Yeah, I think that will be increasingly important to have an understanding of how to manipulate digital software. So, for example, I've been watercolor painting by hand and then comparing the process in digital. And I've had much better outcomes from the digital painting following the physical layout first. So I think it's that tactile memory and tactile learning, kinesthetic learning. I think that'll be crucial. Or we're just going to have concepts that look nice, but they won't have that substance integrity that comes with the handwork.
It says here, what core skills would you think we should continue in secondary schools?
Core skills. Well, I think problem solving is an essential skill, and divergent thinking is an essential skill. I see this with students that come to me and they have a good ability to problem solve. They are the ones that get to an outcome a lot quicker and it's more original. And in terms of, I suppose in terms of other core skills, I think we really need to develop resilience as well in young people. So because they're going to have to be okay with failing, because there's going to be so much innovation and newness all the time and adapting. But I think that students are going to have to be okay with trying something and failing at it, and then being resilient and bouncing back and trying something else. And sometimes I see with my students that you know, I have to really encourage them to experiment and to keep trying things.
Okay, I think we've come to the end. Thank you so
Absolutely
much.
amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. Really, really so much information, and such an eye-opener as to the breadth of careers, jobs that there are now already existing, you know, let alone the ones that we haven't even, you know, haven't even been invented yet. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I hope everybody has a chance to try the interactive exercises. It was a little bit pushed in towards the end, but it's still something that people can do in the recording afterwards if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to stop the recording.
There was so much